Hey, thank you for joining us today, Jennifer. Thank you so much, everyone, for joining us today. Hello and welcome to the Ross, Yale, Fuqua, Johnson, Darden, Haas, Stern, and Tuck School of Business session at the interview prep event with us at GMAT Club. Um, my name is Priya Malani, and I'm your host today. It's my pleasure to introduce Jennifer from ARINGO for this event today. We'll begin with a brief presentation followed by a live Q&A session. Please feel free to post your questions in the chat. And Jennifer, all over to you now. Really looking forward to this. Thank you so much.
Excellent. Thanks, Priya. I really appreciate it. So, hi, everyone. We have got a lot of ground to cover today. So, super excited to have this conversation. As Priya mentioned, put your comments into the chat and we will definitely get them answered. I likely won't answer them as we go along. So, just know that I'm going to get to them at the end, but I want to make sure we get through the entire presentation today in the time that we have. So, Priya, if you don't mind, share the screen and we'll get going. Okay, so as Priya mentioned, we have a long list of schools. So I would say get excited and we will get started. So I'm Jen T with ARINGO MBA Admissions Consulting, and we've been around for about 20 years helping people get into top MBA programs from across the globe. And we help clients from start to finish with everything that's involved with the MBA applications in business school or graduate or undergrad. So if you need help with admissions, we're here to help you. All right. So as we dive in, I want to talk about the differentiators for each one of these schools. So first, we'll talk about Michigan Ross, right? So, and this is important for the interview process, especially if you have multiple schools. This matrix will help you. So starting with Michigan Ross and like looking at their culture, they're very action oriented. Their curriculum is going to be flexible and they use action projects for you to apply your learning. And then they also use hybrid teaching methods for helping you. So keep this in mind as you start to prepare for your program and what makes that school different. So looking at Yale, they're very purpose driven. They have an integrated core that helps you with not only management, but also kind of making sure that you have everybody's perspective in account before you make decisions. And then they do have that global network for advancement management. In fact, I just had one of our clients admitted to the advanced management program, and she's coming from HEC Paris and has a lot to share with her cohort. And so it's really great to get those different perspectives in your classroom. And then it's also going to be a multidisciplinary type of environment. So keep that in mind. And then we move to Duke Fuqua, which is definitely all about Team Fuqua. And they want to make sure that everybody is supported in their journey, right? So it's going to be very collaborative, and they're going to be, I mean, obviously, like everybody is Team Fuqua, it's a family. You're going to make tight-knit relationships throughout the entire program. They have intensive 4-week terms. One of the things that is kind of unique for them is, they want to know the whole person. And so those 25 random things that you put in your application, they're going to come in handy to get to know each other throughout the beginning weeks of your program at orientation. And then they do, again, have a very team-focused perspective. And then moving on to Cornell, it's, again, another one of those tight-knit communities. Big Red is like their kind of like their mascot theme, I guess I would say. And so making sure to kind of keep that in mind as well. They do immersion learning, so it's all very hands-on to make sure that you're applying what you've learned. Another unique part about Cornell is that they have the Tech MBA campus in downtown New York. So you have those connections. Even though you might not be doing the Tech MBA, you have the connections that can help you in your career for the future. And then they do performance learning. So it's very much, again, like hands-on. We'll move through these last few. Darden is very academically rigorous, right? So they're going to be making sure that you are applying all the skills, learning all the things as you work as a student to get through that 2-year program. It's going to be very rigorous, and they want to make sure that you are ready for that. So then the curriculum is definitely, I don't want to say regimented, but it is definitely a very specific type of business management that you're going to learn. And then the Darden Worldwide classes, so you can have these international experiences, and they're fully funded by the Batten organization. So you have that ability to make sure you do study abroad while you're in your MBA program, and they are 100% case method. Next is going to be Berkeley Haas, which is principal-led. They focus on innovation, and they do have that proximity to Silicon Valley. So definitely giving you those resources when it comes to big tech, as well as a lot of startups as well. And again, like experiential learning is important for them. NYU is very much about the IQ and the EQ. They want to make sure that you are as emotionally intelligent as you are smart or ready for the program academically, and you're going to be there to support your peers. And then they have that high flexibility, so students can choose 3 different specializations, which is really important when we talk about that program. And then they do have that experiential project and urban integrated uses, so that you do really use and utilize being in this city. And then there's Tuck, very much about intentionality and the small, tight-knit community. And then they do have a general management focus, so making sure that, it's not too narrow for anyone to be able to to be part of their program, which is helpful because it'll be applicable to any kind of career path. Tuck Go is, again, one of the great opportunities to study abroad. And so you get to do a global immersion. And then their setting is very much personal and intimate. And so you really get to know the people that you're working with throughout your MBA program. Okay, so now that we've kind of given you some ground to know a little bit about the schools, let's talk really quickly about interview mechanics. So first, most of these schools are going to be 30 to 40 minutes. And if it's a little bit shorter, a little bit longer, I wouldn't worry too much. It just all depends on your interviewer sometimes. And so there are blind interviews, which means that they haven't read your application and that they only have your resume when they are talking to you. Adcoms typically are going to have the entire application. If it's a staff member, they may or may not have the entire application. They may just have your resume. It just depends on who you're speaking with. All right, so goals. They want to assess your fit for the school. That is the number one priority of any MBA admissions interview. They also are going to be checking the mechanics of making sure that you can speak English and that you can speak clearly and contribute to the conversation, as well as listening, right? Like they want to make sure that you can listen to what the question is asking and provide an answer that makes sense. Beyond that, we usually kind of guide people towards utilizing the STAR method, which starts with tell us the situation, the task at hand, the action that you took, the results, and then if it's not part of the results, your takeaways or your learning, right? And then beyond that, you want to make sure that you are definitely telling these schools specifically why they are your number one. They're your number one choice. So just make sure that you have that in mind when you go into that interview. Okay, so each one of these schools, we have the inside scoop. So again, like we're covering a lot. So I'm really glad that this is being recorded. And so take a screenshot as we go through, or make sure that you follow up and watch the recording, depending on which schools you're going to be interviewing with. So Michigan Ross, again, kind of that action-based learning is one of its biggest attributes. Yale is going to be kind of Why business and society? Why is that important to you? Duke Fuqua is looking at, they're going to be utilizing admissions fellows, and they're going to be looking at your readiness, maturity, your self-awareness, what kind of impact you can make, and community fit. And then at Johnson, they're looking for the surprise, or what should I take back to the admissions committee after this interview? For Darden, they're very much making sure that you know Darden inside and out, and to get to know you, the actual tell me about yourself or walk me through your experience should actually be closer to 10 minutes, which is very unusual, and we'll talk about that here shortly. For Berkeley Haas, they're looking at the culture fails. Really, they're wanting to make sure that you are a good fit for them. And so always make sure that you're aligning with what their culture is, not necessarily dissolving yourself, but how you can add to that. And then NYU Stern, again, it's very much about the EQ side of things. And they're looking a lot more about how are you going to get a job after you graduate? What is your plan B? So these are all important things that you need to articulate in that interview. With Tuck, they're looking for your tuckiness. This makes me laugh so much. Sometimes it feels really weird to be like, oh, I want to be a Sternie or I want to be a Tucky. But like, I think like once you see the culture, that you are going to kind of see that like it's not dorky or silly. It's really like a family feel when you're on campus. And so this is your family. So essentially, they're going to want to make sure that you really have done your research to show why this is going to be a great fit for you. All right, so let's dig in. Expected questions for Michigan Ross. I'm going to just go ahead and put them all up here, and then, oops, sorry. And then we can kind of go through what I think the biggest question is that you need to study from this specific set of questions. So tell me about a time you had to adjust your leadership style to your team. This is a big one that maybe somebody hasn't had to think of before. And so again, you want to follow the STAR method. So tell them what the situation is and being able to give them the landscape. So I was working on a team and we were going to deliver a finalized product for our client. And suddenly we got a leadership change and my finance manager was changed over to somebody else. And I had to adapt to their style and very much micromanaging as a new manager. And so I had to step back and think, this person really needs lots of information to feel confident in moving forward. So the action that I took was creating weekly updates, daily updates, so that they felt like they were in charge. And from there, we were able to deliver the product to our client on time and ready, but also I built the confidence of my new boss that we were able and capable of delivering this product, and built this long-lasting trust where they started to micromanage less. So this is a quick example of talking about like a time when you had to shift your type of leadership. So another one that you'll want to be prepared for is a time when you had constructive feedback. So start digging into your annual reviews or quarterly reviews and finding those moments where somebody gave you some tough love and some feedback, and think about how you want to frame that. Again, going back to this environment at Michigan Ross is very much action-based. So I learned this and implemented it, right? So you want to be able to show that you have this capability. Okay, moving on to their next one. Yale. So Yale has a couple of very interesting questions that you will see that are unique, but one of them is that before your interview, they will ask you to submit a quote. And during your interview, you will be expected to share what that quote means to you and why you chose it. And so I wouldn't say that you have to go and find like an obscure quote, but I would find one that really does resonate with you, because it's not about, oh, you had the most prestigious person. It could be your grandfather who gave you advice, and tell them about that quote and why it resonates with you, right? So it's not 100% like what the quote is, it's more of what it means to you. And think about leveraging this as another way to share a different dynamic during the interview. So if you feel like you have a lot of professional experience, but you want to be able to share something that's more personal, or maybe something that happened early in life, not necessarily college or professional, that shaped who you are, I would use that, right? Like, you want to bring them different exciting experiences and keep adding to that conversation. And another one that they will likely ask is a little bit more about business and society. Again, each one of these schools has their own personality, and this is one of those key moments for Yale, is that they want to see that part of your vision is to create good, and how to do that at this kind of like marriage of business and society. These are two relationships that cannot be taken apart, and how can they work together for good? All right. Okay. Oops, sorry. This is the same one. Sorry. Okay. Duke Fuqua. Okay. So walk me through your resume. Why Fuqua? Like, these are definitely things that you have to start researching, and like look and review your actual application to remember why and what you put in there. But you want to tell me about a time that you worked with a difficult team member. This is really great, because Team Fuqua isn't about everything being sunshine and rainbows. It's difficult. There's times when you're going to disagree. People are going to come, and everybody's an expert in something different. How are you going to be able to help either the person see your point of view, or yourself see their point of view? So if you've had a time where you've had to put yourself into somebody else's shoes, this is that moment to share in this interview. Okay, so, and then again, remember that the admissions fellows are looking at your readiness, your maturity, self-awareness, as well as the impact and community fit. So remember that as you go through these essays, or these different questions. Okay, so let's move on to our next school. So Cornell Johnson, why MBA, why Cornell? Again, all very common. What makes Cornell the right fit for you? And then their kind of special sauce of, what are 3 bullets that I should tell the community or the committee about you after our time together? And so this is your moment to really make sure that you have your brand in mind, right? So if that's, I'm somebody who has a global perspective. After growing up and moving frequently with a military family, I have been able to quickly adapt to new situations and meet new people and build relationships. Or maybe you want to express your quant readiness or quant heaviness in your background. Or again, like, what's important to you? If it's social impact, then, how does that matter to you? How does that resonate in what you've done and what you've accomplished? So think about these themes, these 3 themes that you want them to take back to the admissions committee. The other one that's right underneath that is, what would your colleagues say about you that is incorrect? So this is such an interesting question that I think like you should be ready for it, right? Is like, what do people assume about you but don't know? And again, like, if you're like all day, like, I'm working in these spreadsheets and I'm like the Excel nerd, blah, 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 like all day, this is me at work. But outside of work, I want to be really creative, and I like to play guitar and write new songs, or I really like to paint, or I'm actually very adventurous outside of work and I like to go scuba diving or cliff diving or something that like shows, again, another dynamic of who you are. Okay, so moving on to Darden. Again, like the most important question here that you should be prepared for is the tell me about you story. Because again, it's blind and they don't know anything about you yet. Now, put into your perspective or in your mind that you also they're a very case heavy program. So thinking about how could you present your case study, right? Like, this is my background. This is, what I've been able to accomplish. And so how can you deliver it in a way that makes it digestible and actionable for them, right? Like, you're making this interview even more convenient. And then beyond that, again, they want to see how you're going to fit into the culture. Darden's one of my favorite schools, and they are adamant to make sure that people are admitted to Darden because they love Darden, right? So anytime you have a moment to infuse something specific about the campus, or I said campus, and that's not even the right. You're supposed to say the grounds, right? So like anytime you can use their terminology, talk about their location, anything that can happen, like what do you like to do outside of work? You could say like, oh, I really like to trek. And so I look forward to all of the hiking in the Appalachian Mountains and being able to explore the area around the grounds. So this is, a big moment for you to, again, show that research. All right. So Berkeley Haas. I would say that most U.S. schools are maybe steering away from asking this question directly, but I wanted to highlight it because with everything that's happening kind of politically, they're stepping away from asking about diversity, equity, and inclusion, but they're still looking for it. And this can be for any school that you're applying to. So don't feel that like, oh, Berkeley, I have to do this. No, you really want to do that. This is still a priority. This is one of the top recruitment priorities of any MBA admissions committee is making sure that everybody is, excuse me, that everybody is coming from a different perspective and going to add to the conversation in the classroom. So DEI, or diversity, equity, and inclusion, you don't necessarily have to call it out, and they might not ask you that specifically. But if you have a moment where you've been able to help bring somebody into the group that wasn't part of the group ahead of time or before, that's perfect. Or if you can highlight a moment where you've made sure that things were inclusive, and that could be not just who you involved in it, but like how you made it accessible. So maybe you work in product development or some part of product, and you were really concerned about usability or accessibility for differently abled people. This is, your moment to really kind of shine here. And so if you have some sort of experience, I would try to include that in your answers when you come up with some situations that you want to share that are going to adapt for those. Tell me about a time when. Okay, so next, okay, actually, I'm sorry. I have to go back to one more thing. So this last question, tell me about a time when you led a team without formal authority. So when we think about an MBA program, you're going to have a ton of group projects, and no one's going to be assigned leadership because you're all leaders. You all have different perspectives. And this is the time where you're going to have to kind of decide, am I the leader or am I the follower, support? So think about this, about like, when was the time when you had to lead the, when you had to lead the team and it wasn't necessarily your role. So just think about that and have a situation ready. Okay. Moving on. NYU Stern. So for NYU Stern, again, EQ, IQ, very important for them. So I would say that one of the questions that typically stems a lot of the people I do interview prep with for Stern is, what career resources do you plan to use? And I will say time and time again, yes, it's important for you to know the curriculum, but it's also important for you to know about these support material, like these supporting programs. So for NYU specifically, they have an alumni in residence. They have a whole program of Stern Works, which is kind of like where you get hands-on experience applying your skills. There is the Ignite program, which is a skills lab. And then thinking about the different clubs and activities that you're planning to be part of while you're at NYU, think about the alumni connections and resources. If there's a specific event that's going to be happening, how you're going to be able to make contact and network with people within that industry. So have something ready for how you plan to make the most of your time at NYU for your internship and your career. Okay, so moving along, Dartmouth Tuck. So walk me through your resume. Again, all very lighthearted. And I would say that the schools that we're discussing today, for the most part, the walk me through your resume or tell me your story can be slightly more personal. So that means that you can give a little bit of your story ahead of time. Like a little bit about your background. Again, like I said before, like growing up in a military family, I moved a lot. And so I easily learned how to create and craft relationships with people. And this influenced me as I moved to college and decided to get a degree in communications and moved right into a training management program, starting my career working one-on-one working with people on a daily basis and making an impact, blah, 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 right? Like, so you can tell a little bit of your story. And then at the end, whenever you get done going through your professional experience, I think that it's great for these specific schools that you can add a little bit about who you are outside of work. And you can say, in addition to, my daily work, or in addition to this, outside of work, I like to do X, Y, and Z. So I think that with these schools, you can absolutely add that into the conversation. So for Tuck, I think that this is a great this is a great question to highlight that is also repeated across these different schools too, right? Like, how will you contribute to the community? So think about the special skills that you bring, or your diverse perspective of maybe you've worked in global procurement, not only in India or in the UK, but also in Singapore and Thailand, right? Like something so different that's, they're not used to, or a little more obscure, right? Like, so think about those different perspectives about how I'm going to contribute to the classroom and share this knowledge with the classroom. So the other thing to think about here too is, like, if you are in a role or a field that is really common for post MBA, then, like if you're working in finance or investment banking, or you're already working for a consulting firm, then you can talk about the resources that you can bring to your classmates and what they can learn from you. So think about like that part of like how I'm going to contribute to the classroom, and then the clubs and activities that you want to be part of as well. And then if you're somebody who really feels like community outside of like the work is really important for you, you can also talk about, I can't think of the name of it, but like different schools have different community outreach programs, like where you might do mentoring or things like that. So look for those programs as well. Okay, awesome. So that was a lot. And I know we have a lot of questions. Priya, how much time do we have left?
We have exactly 15 minutes.
Ah, yay. Everything worked out. So really quickly, I just want to talk about how you kind of tie up the end of your interview. You'll want to always have, I would say 2 to 3, right? Questions to ask the interviewer, and they can vary depending on who your interviewer is. If it's an AdCom person, then you can ask something about how you've seen alumni be able to utilize the network to get to the next step in their career, or maybe in the future, how do they come back and interact and pay it forward, or right, like, so you can kind of incorporate that. Or if you are interviewing with alum, you can ask them, what aspect of the pay it forward network is something that you say that still benefits you today, right? So if it's a student, man, let me just, I'm sorry, I get so excited. So when we think about an interview, anybody who's volunteering, an alumni, a student, they're there to contribute to their community. And that's why they're volunteering to do this, is they want to give something back. So they want to do the interview. You psychologically, you want to allow them to control it, right? So waiting for them to ask you the question. And then the biggest part of anything is they want to contribute. They want to share their experience. And so that's where these questions come in. They've asked you a lot of questions. You've got to talk a lot. Now, at the very end, you want them to have the ability to make a contribution to the conversation and share their experience, which is, again, like the whole reason that they volunteer to do this. So ask questions that ask them about their experience. Don't ask technical questions, like really asking them about this, or being able to have them get excited during the end of their interview. Your interview helps with, at the end, them going through and writing their evaluation in this frame of mind of like, wow, that was a really great conversation. I can't wait for them to be on campus next year, or something like that, right? So you want to ask them about their experience. You don't want to ask anything that you could find on the website, because it just kind of makes you look like you didn't do your research, or that you really haven't thought of something that would be beneficial. The other side of this is that you also, like, so I had a client one time during our first prep ever. They were wanting to go into finance, but finance wasn't the biggest strength of this school. And so they were like, I wasn't able to find a lot about finance, and finance is probably not the right thing, right? Like, I'm just using this as an example. I wasn't able to find a lot of resources about finance throughout the curriculum, but can you tell me more about how students learn about finance? And it's like, wow, you just told me that this school isn't the right school for you. So again, like, trying to be strategic, but not over strategic, where you kind of like sell yourself out and be like, this isn't the right fit for me. So all right. So I think that's kind of it. I mean, like, I've gone through a lot of different things. These are pretty common pitfalls that people kind of have. I would say one of the biggest things that people are not ready for is, that people aren't ready for is when, like, what their environment is around them. So I would definitely work with a friend, do some video, kind of set up the video so it'll be like what you're going to do, what you're going to practice, or work with somebody from ARINGO, and kind of get their point of view of like where you should be with the camera, so that you're looking closer to eye, not necessarily looking down at them. I have a lot of people where their laptop is down on their desk and they're like looking down at their interviewer, which is just not a great dynamic. Or there's a lot of motion behind them, or they do this. I had one guy do this like the whole interview prep session. I was like, I'm getting dizzy. Like, you're making me seasick. So, do a recording so that you can kind of catch those things about yourself that maybe you didn't know, or maybe you're fidgety, whatever that might be. Take a video, learn a little bit more about yourself before you actually dive into that actual interview. Okay, now, what questions do we have?
All right. So the first question that we have is here on your screen. Can you speak about the differences between the Haas pre-recorded interview and the normal interview with a student or alum?
Yeah, so you can find this on the GMAT Club website too. So I'm not like spilling any secrets, but with the Berkeley Haas recorded interview, there are 3 prompted questions that are going to be standard that they're going to ask, and then 2 that vary based on random assignment. So you have 3 that you absolutely can prepare for. So make sure that you're doing that, right? Like do your research, know what those questions are, have smart answers for them. Then there's kind of like a bank of what people have been asked for those other random questions. And that's what I would prepare for. And I know that some people, either there's no more slots or maybe they prefer to do the pre-recorded one. Either way, it doesn't change what priority your status is for the school for like admissions, right? Like, so what I'm trying to say is it doesn't matter if you interview with a person or the pre-recorded session. Either one of those are definitely viable interview experiences that are part of the entire application process. So you're not at a disadvantage if that's what you're left with if you wanted an in-person or like a person interview.
All right. Thank you. So the next question we have is this in the STAR format, a framework. Is one sentence for every part of is the proper length of answer, or do interviewers expect a longer answer?
I think 1 to 2 sentences would be fantastic. Again, the biggest part is making sure that you've simplified it enough for the person to understand the situation. So again, like see what that looks like, see what it sounds like. You usually want to spend 2 to 5 minutes per question on the answer. So you have a little bit of leeway with the tell me about a time questions because sometimes there's a story that comes along with it. So that's okay. But don't make it so short that they don't get the context and they're like, okay, what does that really mean? Like, what was happening?
Understood. So basically, what we are trying to say is perfectly conveyed.
Yes.
All right. Next question here. How is it perceived if your plan B is a completely different industry or path than your plan A?
So I think that it depends on how they relate. If it's your ultimate goal is to pivot into a different industry and your backup plan is to return to your current industry, that seems pretty safe. If you are wanting a plan B that's completely different, I would say you'd have to give a little bit of explanation about why, right? Like there needs to be a little bit something more. Without context, like I would say if you already got the interview, likely it's something that you've discussed in your application. I, again, kind of err on the side of don't make it so complicated that the interviewer walks away with, I don't think I know enough information to make a decision.
Okay. So the next question we have is this. Hi, will working in 3 different verticals in 3 different places of the same company for a span of 5 years uh, will put more weightage, or working in 3 different companies in 5 years will have more weightage?
So applications, interviews are all marketing, right? So it's all in the narrative that you want to craft. So if you want to kind of pitch yourself as an expert in a niche area, you can talk about how you've worked through these 3 different areas within the same company and that you've really come to become an expert or have a wide depth of that industry or product or whatever it might be. Whereas somebody who's maybe jumped around a little bit can say, like, I have experience in these different fields and I can, do X, Y, and Z. So it's all in how you pitch it, right? Like the AdCom is looking for you to tell them why you're qualified, and that's what you need to do. So what happened, and now I need to figure out what the narrative is that makes sense to why I'm here now trying to get the MBA. So I would say that it doesn't necessarily change the weightage. It's the story that you tell.
Right. Thank you. Thank you, Jennifer. So the next one we have is this from Pooja. That thanks for the session, Jennifer. I have a question rolling in my head. So basically, she's asking that does it increase the chance of getting an interview invite if we have made the effort to meet the ATCOM in person during an event?
I think it definitely helps, right? Like, so if you have a profile that's way out of scale or doesn't make sense, then that's not going to change that perspective. But meeting them in person means that you have the ability to get a different insight. So if you went to an open house, attended webinars, or again, like went to an MBA fair and were able to meet somebody, that's important. And so, okay, I just wanted to make sure I read the question correct. So I don't know that it's necessarily going to change whether you do or don't get an invite. It adds a point to your profile, right? Like in the CRM system of like net promoter score, etc., of how engaged you are. But it doesn't necessarily mean that you're going to get an interview. What you should do is utilize that meeting to make sure that you're incorporating what you learned into the application so that they can be like, oh, wow, like you have this special insight as to how our program is going to be uniquely special for you. But it doesn't change your actual outcome itself about if you're going to get an interview or not.
All right. So we just have 4 more minutes. We'll take a few questions for the next 3 minutes now. So one question is that are these schools representatives expecting us post-interview action?
Yeah. So I know that I am old school, but if you have access to the interviewer's email address, or if not, you can email the committee and say, I'd love to pass along my thanks for the interview, because this is your time for you to kind of put everything back into a package. Can you please, like, I thank you so much for taking the time to get to know me and sharing your insight about the program, and if there was something else that they told you you didn't know or something like that, add that to the thank you. And again, like if it's a student, don't go and like you don't have their contact information and it's kind of, they've kept it separated, then don't stalk them on LinkedIn or anything like that and try to like send them a secret message. You can just send it to the admissions committee and say, like, can you please pass along my thanks of, with kind of, again, like the thank you for this.
All right. So next we have is, all right. Yeah. So we have a question here that what are some non-basic ways to incorporate action-based learning in my Ross interview? That is obviously critical to talk about, but I do not want to sound boring, repetitive. Thank you. And also just
Yeah.
reminding we have just 1 minute left.
Okay, great. So I would say think of an example where either you received a directive that you haven't done before or that you received feedback, and how you took that into mind and put it into practice. That's going to be the biggest thing. And that could be even from like when you were a fresher and just out of school and learning something new, or even when you move to a new job or new role as well.
Thank you. Thank you, Jen. That was quick. All right. So here I would like to end the session here with a compliment that we received in the comment section for you here
Oh,
and
thanks.
the session. It says that, wow, thank you, Jen. This is super useful advice for my MBA interview.
Awesome. Thanks, Dan. Awesome. So my contact information's here. So if you need help with interview prep or have specific questions, please reach out. We offer interview prep in, anything that you might need as far as admissions goes for top MBA programs.
Yep. Thank you. Thank you all for joining us today for the Ross, Yale, Fuqua, Johnson, Darden, Haas, Stern, and Tuck session as interview prep event with GMAT Club. A special thank you to Jenifer from ARINGO. for sharing such valuable insights and guidance with our audience. We hope this session helps you feel more confident as you move forward in this process, and wishing all of you good luck, um, we hope to keep seeing you in the events. Thank you so much.
Bye.
Have a great day.